The fake news media has once again tried to twist what Donald Trump said and taken it way out of context. This happens all the time. What else is new at this point? In other news, Candace Owens and the Daily Wire have finally split. Now, neither side has given us the exact reason for this, but I have some assumptions. And last but not least on the agenda today, Elon Musk's Neuralink brain chip has finally been cleared for human testing, and they're starting to see some results. It seems like this could be a very promising thing for our future, but what if we look into how it actually got to this place, well, in the first place? All of that and more today. Welcome back to Free Speech. Welcome back to the show. Now let's get right into the first thing on the agenda for today. If you were watching any mainstream news outlets like CNN or MSNBC, which their entire viewership pretty much comes from people who are stuck in airports, so I doubt that any of you are actually watching that. But if you happen to see any headlines from them, you probably heard about Donald Trump's bloodbath statement. The media has been trying to twist this, saying that Donald Trump has essentially threatened that there will be a bloodbath if he is not president. However, they are missing the context and the actual information behind this statement. So, let's look at what it actually is. According to an article from the Daily Wire, quote, former President Donald Trump slammed the media on Monday after multiple outlets ran out of context headlines on a prediction he made about there being a bloodbath in the auto industry job market due to President Joe Biden's policies. NBC News, CBS News, Rolling Stone, and other outlets published headlines on Trump's bloodbath comments, excluding the fact that he was referring to American auto workers being hurt by Biden's policies. He made the remarks during a speech in Ohio on Saturday. The fake news media and their Democrat partners in the destruction of our nation pretended to be shocked at my use of the word bloodbath, even though they fully understood that I was simply referring to imports allowed by crooked Joe Biden, which are killing the automobile industry. Trump said on his Truth Social platform, "The United Auto Workers, but not their leadership, fully understand what I mean." He also took a shot at Biden's electric vehicle policies, which he said would lead to no cars being able to be made in the United States. Quote, with the electric car mandate being pushed by Joe Biden, there soon won't be any cars made in the USA unless I'm elected president, in which case auto manufacturing will thrive like never before, end quote. For reference, not everyone knows about these EV policies and what exactly Donald Trump is referring to. I've done a whole bunch of research on this for Team Policy Debate this year, so let's go down the rabbit hole of Joe Biden's EV mandate. From the White House briefing room, this is a fact sheet on the policy. President Biden's Build Back Better agenda and the bipartisan infrastructure deal invest in the infrastructure, manufacturing, and incentives that we need to grow good-paying union jobs at home, lead on electric vehicles around the world, and save American consumers money. Today, the president will announce a new set of actions aimed at advancing these goals and increasing the impact of these investments, positioning America to drive the electric vehicle future forward, outcompete China, and tackle the climate crisis. Specifically, he will sign an executive order that sets an ambitious new target to make half of all vehicles sold in 2030 zero-emission vehicles, including electric, hybrid, or fuel cell electric. He will sign an executive order that sets a new target of electric vehicles representing half of the new vehicles sold in 2030. This builds on the announcements today from automakers representing nearly the entire U.S. auto market, who have positioned around the goal of reaching 40 to 50% electric vehicle sales share in 2030. But even though that sounds like it could be a good idea in principle, think about it. Do we really want a federal executive order to make half of all vehicles sold in America electric by the year 2030? Don't you think that's kind of imposing on the private sector a little bit, especially when there is not as high of a demand as there is a supply now? Let's check out some more evidence on this. It didn't work out very well because it turns out Americans just don't want this system. According to Gallup.com in a study by Megan Brennan, quote, Americans' adoption of electric vehicles is proving to be slow, as relatively few currently own one, 4%, or are seriously considering purchasing one, 12%, end quote. Now, as we can see here, there is an extremely small portion of Americans that actually own or even are considering buying an electric vehicle. Not exactly prime for trying to sell half of all of them being electric by 2030. As a result of this low demand, according to Fox in 2023, car dealers are continuing to warn of waning interest in EVs, and manufacturers are rethinking their strategies. In a letter to President Biden, a coalition of thousands of car dealers from around the country said they opposed any more EV mandates, saying enthusiasm has stalled and noting that their lots are full of EVs consumers don't want. Yikes. This is what happens when we let the federal government step in and try to over-regulate the private sector. We end up with thousands of vehicles that we can't even sell, and thousands of car dealers across the country having to write direct letters to the president to tell him, hey, you're kind of hurting our sales. It's ridiculous. This isn't how the federal government is supposed to function. In conclusion, all we can see here is another case of a bad policy that needs to be changed, and an untrustworthy media with nothing better to do than twist the words of a former president that they just happen to not like very much. That's all I've got to say about electric vehicles for now. Hopefully, when Donald Trump gets back into office, he will be able to drive us back to letting the private sector do their thing. The federal government and the private sector definitely have a disagreement on how to best sell cars in this nation. Do you know who else has a disagreement? The Daily Wire and Candace Owens. Next up on the agenda today, Candace Owens and the Daily Wire have split as of Friday. According to an article from the Daily Mail, quote, Candace Owens and the Daily Wire have parted ways after weeks of tension with the outlet's co-founder Ben Shapiro over the Israel-Hamas war and her promotion of various conspiracy theories. Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship, CEO Jeremy Boring posted on Friday morning. Candace also shared her personal website for those who want to support her work and teased many announcements in weeks to come, saying she will bring back her show on YouTube after a brief hiatus, end quote. Now, when I saw this headline, I thought two things. One, why is this happening now? Two, what is the actual reason behind it? A lot of you probably are aware of the fact that Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro were involved in a couple of different feuds last year over the Israel-Hamas war. All of this was happening back in October and November primarily. In my opinion, if they were going to do something about that, it should have been at that time. Because neither side has really been involved in conflict since then, and they seemed like they had resolved it and that it was fine. But for whatever reason, maybe it was a contractual thing, maybe she couldn't quit or they couldn't fire her until a certain amount of time, I don't know. But either way, she has ended up splitting from the Daily Wire. According to an article from Yahoo News, quote, Owens' feud with Shapiro appeared to begin in November last year when she tweeted, "No government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide, ever. There is no justification for genocide. I can't even believe this needs to be said or is considered the least bit controversial to state." Though she didn't mention the conflict by name, her comments were widely interpreted to be referencing the war in Gaza. She went on to give tremendous credit to the Daily Wire for allowing differing opinions on the network, but added, "I hope that it will remain respectful and that you wouldn't throw your colleagues under a bus, so to speak." End quote. Like I said, this feud was last year, last November. Now, neither side exactly publicly stated that it had been resolved, but business seemed to go on as usual. We're all adults here, we can figure this out kind of thing. But for whatever reason, whether the conflict has sprung back up again or whether it's for another reason, she's no longer with the company. According to the Christian Post in 2024, neither gave a reason for her departure, which comes in the wake of mounting criticism against her for comments she has made about Israel, which again led to a public feud with Daily Wire editor Ben Shapiro last fall. We don't entirely know what happened, but I think it's something many of us could have seen coming. I love the Daily Wire. I think that they have great content. I think that they give great perspectives on the news and like many of the different personalities on there. I don't completely agree with this decision, but I'm interested to find out what the actual reason is at some point. Many people online are speculating that it has something to do with the conflict with Ben Shapiro over the Israel-Gaza thing. I think that that's completely likely. But if that's the case, then why did this not happen last year when all of this was actually going on? Why wait so long? Is there something else going on? There are just too many questions and neither side has given us the answer yet, so we'll all just have to stay tuned. Speaking of tuning in, let's talk about brain chips, shall we? Now, it sounds promising enough. The Neuralink is being tested on humans and the first one of their trials has been a success. And if we look at Neuralink's website in 2024, it says, "Our mission is to create a generalized brain interface to restore autonomy to those with unmet medical needs today and unlock human potential tomorrow. The threads of our implant are so fine that they can't be inserted by the human hand. Our surgical robot has been designed to reliably and efficiently insert these threads exactly where they need to be." It sounds kind of cool in theory. Like, the fact that people that have unmet medical needs, some kind of a disability, are going to be able to do things with this chip. Admittedly, that sounds like a really cool thing. I don't know how I feel about robots implanting technology into human beings' brains, though. I don't know. I just don't trust it. I think that our society is getting closer and closer to willingly putting ourselves in the Matrix. I'll explain more about that later, though. Now, let's talk about why exactly this could be seen as a promising thing. According to Business Insider in 2024, Neuralink, Elon Musk's neural technology company, revealed during a live stream on Wednesday that its first human patient to have received a brain chip implant is a 29-year-old man who became a quadriplegic after a serious diving accident about 8 years ago. Quote, "It's not perfect. I would say we have run into some issues. I don't want people to think that this is the end of the journey. There's a lot of work to be done, but it has already changed my life," the patient said, speaking to Bliss Chapman, an engineer at Neuralink. During the live stream on Wednesday, he could be seen using a specialized chair sitting in front of a laptop. He appeared to be controlling a game of chess while his hands remained on the armrests of the chair. He said, "I love playing chess, and this is one of the things that y'all have enabled me to do. Something that I really wasn't able to do much over the last few years, especially not like this." He said that he had dislocated parts of his spinal cord in a freak diving accident about 8 years ago that left him paralyzed from below the shoulders. That's a terrible thing to happen to a human being. And I can absolutely empathize with this man. It would be terrible to have that happen to you, and you would want any chance to gain some level of that functionality back that you lost in the accident. I still don't know that I would trust robots implanting technology into my brain, however. This is the first reported human trial of this Neuralink technology. But here's the thing. The FDA wasn't even letting them test it on humans for a while because of quite a few issues that I'm going to get into in a second. However, the FDA has finally given them clearance. According to Interesting Engineering in 2024, following FDA clearance for human clinical trials in May of 2023, this man became one of 6 approved test subjects. In the video, he effortlessly plays chess without physically interacting with the computer. He said, "I could get it to move wherever I wanted. Just stare somewhere on the screen and it would move wherever I wanted it to. It's really cool." Elon Musk and Neuralink envision using this technology to empower people with disabilities and paralysis. The company plans to implant this in more patients, enabling extensive testing and potentially leading to mass distribution. Neuralink has promised future updates on the progress and other technological advancements shortly. Again, objectively, the mission behind this is a really, really cool thing. I think it's awesome that there's going to be something around that can help disabled people. Do I think that we should help them? Absolutely. Do I think that this is the right way to do it? No. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. You're a conspiracy theorist. You think we're just going to end up in the Matrix. Of course you don't like it. Well, when we look at the background and what actually went on behind the scenes of creating this technology, we see the potential of the other side of the issue. That's why I'm a bit hesitant about this. According to Wired in 2024, in an experimental surgery that took place in December of 2019 performed to determine the survivability of an implant, an internal part of the device broke off while being implanted. Researchers observed the monkey that it was implanted in, identified as Animal 20 by UC Davis, scratching at the surgical site and yanking on a connector that eventually dislodged part of the device. The monkey was euthanized on January 6, 2020. Additional reports show the condition of a female monkey called Animal 15 during the months leading up to her death in 2019. Days after her implant surgery, she began to press her head against the floor for no apparent reason, a symptom of pain or infection, the records say. She began to lose coordination, and the staff observed that she would shake uncontrollably when she saw workers. Her condition deteriorated for months until the staff finally euthanized her. Another report indicates that she had bleeding in her brain and that the Neuralink implants left parts of her cerebral cortex focally tattered. Yet another monkey, Animal 22, was euthanized in March 2020 after his implant became loose. A report revealed that 2 of the screws securing the implant to the skull loosened to the extent that they could easily be lifted out. The report for Animal 22 clearly states that the failure of this implant can be considered purely mechanical and not exacerbated by infection. These investigations followed the US FDA initially rejecting Neuralink's application in early 2022 for approval to conduct in human clinical trials. According to Reuters, the agency's major concerns involved the device's lithium battery, as well as the possibility that the implant's wires might migrate to other parts of the brain. But like I said, this May the FDA gave the company approval for human trials. I know that's a lot of information, a lot to take in, and a lot to process. But let's just think about this logically. If you were seeing these kind of results when you were testing it on monkeys, and yes, I can acknowledge maybe you did fix the issue. If you've seen multiple instances of these implants going terribly wrong, why would we decide that it's a good idea to test them on human beings? The whole thing reminds me of Rocket Raccoon's backstory in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't know if anybody else thought about that, but the whole subplot of the movie where they're implanting technology into animals, it just reminds me very much of that, and we all know how that went in Guardians of the Galaxy. And it looks like it went very similarly here, because none of these trials on monkeys actually proved to be successful, none of the ones I've described. There were a few success stories here and there, I won't deny that, but the overwhelming majority of these tests ended really, really badly. So why would we decide that it's a good idea to start testing this on human beings? I think we're willingly getting ourselves closer and closer to living in the Matrix, and no one sees the similarities. I know, it's a conspiracy theory, but think about it. Brain implants. The World Economic Forum wants us to live in pods. Elites are seeking to rewrite objective truth every single day. And there is so much being done in the virtual world. Just think about it. We've seen people walking around in broad daylight with the Apple Vision Pro. Multiple instances in multiple different countries around the world. Everything is becoming digital. Everything is becoming virtual. We're implanting this into our brains. Now, could this be hacked by the government or some kind of entity? It's possible. Could it be encrypted? That's also possible. We don't know very much about this technology because it's not even available for mass distribution yet. We are still in the testing phases of this technology. I'm going to be monitoring this very closely. I think that it has the potential to do something great. However, I think that we have to look at both sides of the issue before we gauge whether or not it's a good idea. I myself am not going to be getting a Neuralink, I keep wanting to call it a Tesla brain chip. I'm not going to be getting a Neuralink implant anytime soon. Hopefully, I will never have to. But we'll see. Maybe the human trials go better than the animal trials did. Maybe it ends up the same way. It's too soon to tell. But either way, what can we take away from this? Well, there's not a whole lot to take away from it other than don't make society the Matrix. Please don't let this end up like Guardians of the Galaxy. But there is some hope to it. I know that it's kind of contradictory because I've gone over both sides quite a few times, but you really have to look at both sides before gauging whether or not you want to take this or whether or not we should pass this for mass distribution. Just something to think about. But I do think at the same time that it's kind of cool, even if it could be putting us closer and closer to the Matrix. Thank you for watching this episode of Free Speech with Lila Cortez. If you liked what you saw and heard, make sure that you like this video and hit that subscribe button. If you want the audio version of the podcast, head on over to Spotify. It's also just called Free Speech with Lila Cortez. Have a great day. Be blessed. See you soon.